Good evening and welcome to the 1st of March 2021 meeting of Cabinet. My name is Doug Oliver, Leader of the Council. This meeting is being held remotely and is being live streamed via YouTube, and the recording of it will be available afterwards on our website. Councillors and officers are reminded to put their mobile phones on silent if they have one near them, leave their cameras on and mute their microphones when not speaking, as this will reduce feedback and background noise and saves bandwidth to prevent loss of connection. I will first do a roll call to check all Cabinet members who are expected to attend are present. As I say your name, please turn on your microphone and confirm you are connected. Members of Cabinet: Councillor Christine Bayliss.
Present.
Councillor Jay Brewerton.
Present.
Councillor Terry Byrne.
Present.
Councillor Kevin Dixon.
Present.
Councillor Catherine Field.
Present.
Councillor Sue Prejak.
Present.
Councillor Hazel Timpey.
Present.
Councillor Jonathan Vinehall.
Present.
Other members joining us today, I think, Lisa, can you confirm the other members present in the room? If your name is not called out, please type your surname into the chat facility so your attendance may be recorded.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've recorded Councillor John Barnes, Mary Barnes, Roger Bird, Councillor Brown, Carroll, Cook, Courtell, Curtis, Drayson, Ganley, Gray, Harmer, Johnson, Kirby Green, Langlands, Madeley, Maynard, Mear, Osborne, Stevens, Thomas.
Thank you, Lisa. If your name hasn't been called out, please type into the chat facility. Officers joining us today are Malcolm Johnson, Chief Executive, Robin Venard, Assistant Director Resources, Ben Hook, Head of Acquisitions, Transformation and Regeneration, Joe Powell, Head of Housing and Community, Tony Baden, Finance Manager. The Democratic Services Officer today and Committee Clerk is Lisa Cooper. Members of the committee will be making the decisions today against a named vote. Lisa will call out each member in turn and they will either answer for, against or abstain. Members, please remember to turn on your microphone again at this point. Please turn off again after voting. Those members who wish to speak, please indicate by typing your surname only in the chat facility. Please be aware that there will be a time, there can be a time delay of around 5 seconds while the member appears on a screen. Each item will be reintroduced as we get to it. So if we can commence the meeting with agenda item 1. Authorisation, please, to sign the minutes of the meeting held, the last meeting held on the 8th of February 2021 as a correct record of the proceedings.
So moved.
Agreed.
Thank you. Lisa, are there any apologies for absence?
There are no apologies, Chairman.
Thank you. Malcolm, are there any additional agenda items?
No, there are no additional agenda items, Chairman.
And item 4, Malcolm, are there any urgent decisions?
No, there are no urgent decisions, Chairman.
Thank you. Agenda item 5, disclosure of interests. Members, please indicate in the chat facility if you wish to declare. Please speak clearly if you have a personal and prejudicial, and say the agenda item it refers to. Members with a personal and prejudicial interest will be asked to temporarily leave the meeting at the start of the item. Lisa will invite members to rejoin the meeting when the item is finished. Okay. If we can proceed forward, please, with agenda item 6.
Chairman,
can I declare my interest?
Right, yes, thank you, Kevin.
Item 8, community grants scheme. My wife works for 2 organisations, Battle Preschool and Breed Parish Councils. That is a pecuniary interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other declarations?
Yes, please. Can I declare?
Yes, please.
Item 8, resolution 1. I am chair of Battle Preschool, which is suggested it gets a grant. I've taken advice from the monitoring officer who tells me this interest is personal and prejudicial. I therefore can stay and speak, but I can't vote.
Thank you. Are there any other declarations? Right. Sorry, Lisa, were you wanting to mention
Chairman,
something?
I was just indicating that members needed to make some interests.
Thank
Declare
you.
some interests. Thank you.
Yeah, jolly good. Okay, that's fine. Okay then, agenda item 6, housing first accommodation for rough sleepers. Report from Joe Powell, Head of Housing and Community Service. This is to provide an update on progress within the East Sussex Rough Sleeping Initiative and to seek approval for the council to let housing first accommodation to rough sleepers using non-secure tenancy agreements. Thank you for all your work on this, Joe, and your team. Please present.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, everybody. As members will be aware, the accommodation options available for rough sleepers locally are very limited, extremely limited, and that rough sleepers experience a range of problems, and those experiencing sofa surfing, in addition to rough sleeping, experience a range of problems to the extent that the average life expectancy for a male rough sleeper is 47 years and female 43 years old. Following the Everyone In instruction from government back in the summer, we made additional temporary accommodation placements and continue to. Presently, we have 8 former active rough sleepers accommodated with our rough sleeping initiative, and a further 22 people at significant risk of rough sleeping and are unable to continue their sofa surfing arrangements given the constraints and restrictions under lockdown and other phases of the pandemic so far. In 2020, Rother District Council, with its partners within the Rough Sleeping Initiative, RSI, which includes partners from health, social care, the other 5 local housing authorities, amongst others, were successful in a bid to the government's Next Steps accommodation pathway. And the Rough Sleeping Initiative that underpins that bid will be delivering all the support to the Housing First units, which I'll go on to describe. There were 2 elements to the bid, a revenue element to meet this short-term interim cost of extra rough sleeping temporary accommodation placements. That was a grant was awarded of 112,000. There is a deficit emerging in that provision of in the report suggests around 50,000. We have actually been given an extra 35,000 last week, I think. So that should go some way to meeting that deficit, but obviously that's a rough estimate at this stage, and that will be built into the Q4 monitoring, I'm sure. Beyond that, there was a second tranche, which is the main tranche to discuss today, which is the tranche of, again, approximately, the report says 265,000. That's since changed actually to 280,000. The property's completed on Friday last, and there are some works to do and achieve in order to get the properties ready by 31st of March. So we think approximately 280,000 grant of 60%, to which we are matching the remainder. That will bring forward 4 units of housing first accommodation. Those are in one block in Bexhill, and board members have been consulted, as have relevant members, obviously. Yeah, just to make a note of that amendment at point 7, excuse me. So just briefly, Housing First is a model of supported accommodation. The overall principle of it being that to provide stable, independent homes for people with multiple complex needs. That's typically people with mental health diagnoses, or not actually, often drug and alcohol addiction, and other compounding factors such as criminal past, etc., which is not exclusively the case, but can be quite common, and makes these cases extremely complicated, and they tend to fall between the posts of statutory functions. So the housing, social care and mental health teams, principally the Acts, don't always provide for them on their own. So there's a need for us to come together around these individuals. In order to deliver the 4 units, we need to be able to issue non-secure tenancies, which sound, because the alternative to them is a secure tenancy, they sound less secure than they are. As you'll see from the appendices, Appendix A, the eviction process is essentially the same as it would be for any other tenancy. It is a lower form of tenure than a secure tenancy, but as members will be familiar with from other RPs, registered provider tenancies, or other councils, stockholding council authorities, the equivalent is an assured and secure tenancy. The levels of are not deemed appropriate for this group and this service, because it's not necessarily destination housing that we're providing. The Housing First units are there is no time limit upon them, but we do want people to be moving on into fully independent living with less support in the longer term. So it's considered an appropriate use and is being mirrored across East Sussex. The procedure I mentioned at A is taken verbatim from Wealden, who are obviously stockholding authority, and is a well-established procedure and process. We also have a shared legal service, as members will be aware, so that gives us a fairly robust process and procedure there, I believe, but something we'll need to polish up on, no doubt. And I should say, actually, I think it's a very unlikely event that an eviction will become necessary, given the level of support that's there. All services around these individuals want the best outcome for that person. So if it turns out the accommodation isn't suitable for them, the likelihood is very strongly that more suitable accommodation will be found for them. So that might be in mental health teams, social care teams, for example. So we're currently in a discussion with a range of providers with our county partners in terms of the management of these properties. We do have default options we can use of established partnerships, but we're talking to it's a bit of a live conversation, but we're talking to the obvious partners you might expect in terms of property management, and in terms of our registered provider partners, and beyond that into more specialist property management provision for this group. So I'm happy to take questions, and I hope that's covered the main points of the report.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Joe. Are we seeking other units as we speak? From the point of view of ongoing, we're continuing to explore other accommodation units. Indeed, we have been. This is a first tranche, so we've been given quite strong reassurance that is very likely that Homes England will release a second tranche in 21-22. Our performance at bringing forward these units, I didn't really mention actually that the pace at which these have been brought forward is fast. I think the award was in sort of November, back end of last year, and we've performed very well. I think ourselves and one or two other, well, locally, not every local authority has been able to meet the quota we were allotted, which was 4. So we performed very well bringing those forward, and that will hold us in good stead in the next tranche, because they want to see delivery, as you might expect. So yes, I'm confident we will have more coming forward in the summer and autumn. And well done for bringing this together so quickly as you have done, and I think that's very, very useful. Are there members of Cabinet, apart from Terry Byrne, who will sum this up, that would want to make any comments on this report? No? Then I will invite other members, I believe Councillor John Barnes.
Thank you, Leader. I echo your congratulations to Joe and his team and the partners right across East Sussex. I think the speed with which they moved was admirable, and they have been extraordinarily successful. So lots of nice things to be said about that. These cases are always very complex. Some of them, as Joe has already said, are down to mental health problems, some down to drug or alcohol dependence. You occasionally get one or two who go on the road and appear to be totally sane, and one actually wonders why they do it. But every set of circumstances, in my experience, turns out to be unique, and hence needs a very dedicated package. Clearly, the basis of this is not to provide destination housing, but to provide the kind of housing where you can get people to settle back into a more normal way of life. That said, and I'm coming to my question rather than my comments, I was slightly surprised at the figure of 2 quoted for Rother, because if so, we have 50% in my parish. Although he doesn't stay in the parish, he tends to move around from church porch to church porch. But I don't want to talk a lot about a particular circumstance. But one thing that does strike me is we tend to think of this as an urban problem, and we tend to find a solution in urban circumstances. Now, some of the rough sleepers genuinely don't like to go back into the towns because they associate the towns with alcohol and with drugs and with bad companions. And I wonder, when we look at the next tranche, whether we could actually consider at least finding one unit in rural rather than in urban circumstance. I realise there will be problems around that with finding somebody to manage it. And so I recognise I'm raising a problem for Joe, but it does seem to me we need to recognise that although it's a small minority, there are rough sleepers in the rural areas as well. Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, but thank you, John, for those comments. Joe, would you like just to make any observations on the point?
Yeah, it's a good point, well made, I think, and it is. As I think Councillor Barnes' initial statement that each case is different and equally complex in different ways, and different solutions that are therefore required. And it, whatever solutions we provide, flexibility is key, and our ability to adapt and flex to the needs of each person are key indeed. So it's not uncommon. It's atypical for someone to have a demand a rural area. It's not unusual, but it isn't typical. I think I would be most comfortable taking advice from our now contracted commissioned psychiatrist and our rough sleeping coordinator Rebecca Jackson, who we employ via the East Sussex Housing Officer Group, just to make sure that if we were to set anything such up, that it could be properly and adequately supported, and that the need is demonstrable in the wider cohort. And so yes, is the short answer.
Thank you for those comments. Thank you for that. Councillor Mary Barnes.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. My husband stolen a bit of my thunder, really, but Joe, I do have a question for you, through you, Chairman, and that is that when you come to make a decision about who has these very, presumably temporary accommodation, how do you rate them? Because thinking again about the one that we have the problem with locally, it's quite obvious he has some quite significant mental problems. And you said, I think earlier in your preface, that this was not to be regarded as a permanent solution. Our problem with this young gentleman is that he is so terrified of the police that he won't stay in anywhere for very long, even though he was found accommodation, because he's constantly on the move. He's been in prison, can't cope with that. He's taken drugs, can't bear to be with people who might be again drug addicted. What is the long-term hope that when you get somebody who's the ideal tenant in one of these secure accommodations, that you actually are going to keep them there, to actually make them fit for a future which is of total independence? What is the scenario? Because in our experience with this chap in the village, it's not going to happen.
Thank you, Joe. If you'd like to just respond on that.
Certainly. It's extremely, again, the sort of buzzword is complexity. I mean, they are very complex cases, and I wouldn't like to give the impression that the Rough Sleeping Initiative, or indeed these units, are going to be a magic solution for the years, often decades of trauma that these people have often experienced and leads to this type of behaviour typically. And it's essentially what the while the Housing First units are not designed to be a destination, that the Rough Sleeping Initiative itself certainly is a destination for these service users, and that is there for them, you know, as a network, and essentially that the Rough Sleeping Initiative, while it is an entity in of itself, is a collection of professionals. So there's a psychiatric nurse, there's two qualified social workers, there's drug and alcohol support staff, there's our own housing needs officers, and those are dedicated to this project and to this cohort. And there's a suite of support workers as well who are delivering the support around those individuals. So the assessments are robust, you know, between those professionals who are employed, and latterly actually a psychiatrist who is now part of that team as well. So the assessments are robust, and the needs are the resources rather are then allocated according to levels and types of need. So that this is unprecedented locally, this level of coordination, this level of expertise, perhaps not, but what these services are now doing, which they didn't do before, including our own, is flexing and adapting their own processes. So the acts we work under, the Care Act, Health Act, Housing Act, are put aside, and we think, rather than trying to make this person fit the system, we're going to make the system fit this person. And that's the difference. So in answer to your question, in short, Councillor Barnes, it's challenging to point to examples of where this has been as successful as there are examples, I should say, of this being more successful and effective locally. But Housing First is a now international approach that was developed in the United States in the 90s and is now adopted variously across Europe with great success, and is the level of investment behind it is real. I had by degrees understand from that Robert Jenrick is also a very big supporter of this model, and it is being invested in adequately. So I believe that we are going to see a change in results, and hopefully return to a level of rough sleeping we saw, you know, in earlier years when it was quite relatively low.
Yeah, thanks for those comments, Joe, which I think you've clarified a lot of the points. I think that if a member does have a personal involvement with an individual, take it offline. I'm sure that Joe will be able to give you so much support and information that that you require. But I think this personalised support and this wraparound facility is very encouraging. Right, we have one more member that would like to ask a question of you, Joe. Councillor Cortell, I trust it's relative to the report.
Indeed it is, Chair, thank you. Yeah, I'd also like to commend Joe and our superb housing team on the brilliance of getting all the rough sleepers housed, and it's excellent news that the system is fitting around the person to create individual packages. I admire that. I'm also very, very pleased that the 5 boroughs and district councils have achieved a large tranche of the funding from the appropriate government agency for both the individual packages and for the Housing First investment. And I'm delighted to hear that you're heading for a second tranche of funding, or appear to be heading for a second tranche of funding. This is great news.
Is there a question coming forward, Paul?
Sorry?
Is there a question coming forward?
Yes, there is. My concern is the danger on the horizon with the restoration of the landlord's ability to begin eviction proceedings from the 20th of this month against those COVID residents with rent arrears. And are we at risk of having a fresh wave of rough sleepers that might not be funded by central government?
Joe, do you want to make a quick response to this? It's not really part of this report.
Yeah. Sure, yeah, yes. Is the short answer.
Good. Okay. If I can ask Councillor Terry Byrne, lead member, to sum up on this and move this motion, please, Terry. I know you've worked very closely with Joe, and you've got a very an in-depth working of this new arrangement.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Doug. In answer very quickly to Councillor Cortell, if he listened, yes, we do know there is going to be harder times ahead as we come out of COVID. Nobody quite knows what they are yet. But meanwhile, to sum up both the report and the situation in general, Hugh Merriman has been very vocal in Parliament on asking, can we have an integrated approach to adult social care? And he was asking this before COVID. Now, what County have done here is try and invent that integrated approach. And as Joe said, they've done it by setting aside the various sort of silo mentality responses to government regulations and just saying, how do we all work together to make this work? And I think Joe and his team have done an excellent job, as they have right across the county. People have been very willing to join an integrated approach and try and make it, as Councillor Barnes said, try and pull the services around the particular person rather than trying to go the other way around. So much to be applauded. I have a feeling that the fact that that Rother and Joe's team have managed to use the grant money they've got so quickly and so effectively, that I believe that's made them a better target for future funding. Maybe it shouldn't work like this, but I get the impression that if funding is available, it's given to those people who are seen to be using it properly, seen to be using it quickly rather than dithering. And I think Joe's team has positioned Rother as an authority that will receive that sort of funding. So really, this is very good news. On the second element, I think Joe has covered off really why we need to offer what appears to be less security in these particular 4 units that we're talking about in this report. And it is because if you've got someone with these sort of complex needs, if they have to be moved into a mental health facility or wherever, we don't want an eviction process that's so long it takes that unit, and we haven't got that many of them, it takes that unit out of service for a long while. So this isn't a punitive measure. Again, it's setting us, it's picking the best tool to do the job we need to do. And in this case, that's the sort of tenancy that best fits the way in which we're trying to deliver services to these people. So just finally, I think it's an excellent report. I think it gives members a very good rundown on what we've been doing. Hopefully points the way forward. And on the specific resolution, I fully support the issuing of this type of tenancy in these units. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Terry. Is there someone to second the motion, please?
I'm seconding that motion.
Thank you, Jonathan. Lisa?
Thank you, Chairman. All right, members, I'll read out your name, please. Answer for, against, or abstain. Councillor Bayliss.
For.
Councillor Bruton.
For.
Councillor Byrne.
For.
Councillor Dixon.
For.
Councillor Field.
For.
Councillor Oliver.
For.
Councillor Proshak.
For.
Councillor Timpey.
For.
Councillor Vinehall.
For.
That's carried, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I know that we've expanded on the report, but I think the work that's been done by officers was worth highlighting this for members, so there's a full understanding of this good news story. Thank you very much, Joe and the team, for moving that forward. And if we can move on to agenda item 7. Thank you. Report of Ben Hook, Key Performance Targets 2021-22. Ben Hook, Head of Acquisitions, Transformation and Regeneration. Are you here somewhere?
Yeah, yes, Chair, I am.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. As members will be aware, every year we have a basket of key performance indicators, which are used by overview and scrutiny as the key metrics by which the performance of the council in its various functions is monitored. Every year that basket is changed following what's considered in any given year to be the most important things that we need to consider. There are 11 proposed indicators across 4 areas. The 4 areas are generally designed to try and give members a bit more of a holistic sense of activity in what can be relatively complex areas, particularly with the first 2 areas of housing and communities and economic development and poverty. The housing and communities issues, housing issues in particular, don't relate to a single metric that you can point to and say that's the reason why housing is, people are becoming homeless or why there are further issues. So what we try to do is provide a range of indicators that give members the opportunity to have a bit more of a holistic sense of our performance in those particular areas. The key steer for the ones that for the 11 that are being presented emanates primarily from the corporate plan, which is current the emerging corporate plan, which is going through the public consultation process at the moment. We will look to report separately twice annually on the overall performance of the corporate plan. This is more specific to individual services and activity that's being undertaken. The other key thing, and it's a sort of a glaring omission, and I'm sure Councillor Field would like to come in at some point to talk about this, is the environment strategy. Environment strategy is probably the most high-profile strategy we have in our strategy set at the moment. Obviously with the climate emergency declaration of 2019, and that seek to reduce our overall district carbon footprint to 0 by 2030. We haven't got a KPI in this set basket this year. What we are seeking to do is undertake a baselining exercise over the next 12 months, which would give us sort of a baseline figure for our carbon output, and then also propose a measurement methodology so that in subsequent years we can constantly review the performance against the climate emergency declaration and our progression towards a sort of carbon neutral district. So the 11 indicators revolve around housing and homelessness and communities, and it revolves around house building as well as our performance in terms of reducing the number of households on the housing register and the average length of accommodation in temporary accommodation. The economic development and poverty covers the number of council tax reduction claimants. Obviously, we look to hope that number reduces. In that people who are then the number of people is sort of indicative of the number of people who are facing economic poverty and strife. The council tax collection rates again, and the business collection rates again are both indicators of where people are struggling, maybe to meet their basic bill needs. Waste collection is one that we've had in there. Obviously, our largest contract in terms of money outgoing, and the performance of that, particularly with our position on recycling. And then, of course, additional income coming into the council through a range of factors, not just assets, but obviously the overall income, any additional income generated, as well as our asset income, which has been in there for a number of years now. So the proposal is that Cabinet agree the KPI set, and then this paper to be sent to scrutiny for any further input from them before being adopted for the 2021-22 financial year. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that, Ben. As 2 members of Cabinet would like to speak, Catherine Field. Catherine.
Thank you, and thank you very much to Mr. Hook for the introduction, and he's quite right that I would like to say something. Paragraph 5 talks in outline about the environment strategy. Personally, I'd prefer to see it in paragraph 1, but then you would expect me to say that, I think. As we have said on many times, the environment strategy covers every aspect of the work we do, and it will be the overarching theme in the corporate plan. So I would expect the KPIs to change when the corporate plan has been consulted on and published and is a plan. And then we really should be going for KPIs to make sure we are addressing our carbon challenge. The paperwork talks about benchmarking being done by March 2020, which, as our carbon neutrality is 2030, and the beginning of 2030 is only 7.75 years away from March 2020. I think there is a degree of urgency here that perhaps isn't quite reflected in the paperwork. I know benchmarking is difficult and it's new to us, but plenty of other councils have done the benchmarking and decided how to proceed. So I really hope we will use their expertise and not try and decide to do this ourselves. That way, I hope we can get it all done before March next year and begin on the real work, which is addressing the problems we have with our carbon outputs. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine, do you just want to make any comment on that, Ben, just so we know where we are?
Yeah, no, it's just, I mean, I completely accept everything that Councillor Field has said. The one thing I would just want to reassure her and all other members is we're not going to stop work on the environment strategy to do the baselining. It's something that will happen concurrently. So just to reassure all members, in particular Councillor Field, that the work on the environment strategy will continue at a pace whilst the baselining exercise is undertaken at the same time.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Ben. Councillor Terry Byrne and then Councillor Super.
Thank you, Chair. Back on housing again, I'm personally quite happy with the KPIs we've used. As Ben said, housing is one of those very complex topics that it's very difficult to just say that here's a basket full of metrics and if we meet all those, we're doing well. But the ones we've got are measurable and are effective. However, I don't think anyone intends those to be the only things we measure as regards our performance in housing. Certainly, an update on how we're doing against other authorities, both in the county and nationally, is always useful. So it's certainly my intention not only to monitor these along with other Cabinet members, but also to make you aware of any other progress that we're making, which is not necessarily covered by these KPIs. So this is a small snapshot, but it's not by no means intended to be the only information you get about our progress on housing. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Terry. Sue, Councillor Sue Project.
Thank you very much, Leader. Just to thank Councillor Field. I mean, it's not called climate emergency for nothing. It is an emergency. But I just wanted to draw members' attention to the recycling target. This year, it was really a bit of a finger in the air target, because you note that reference is made to the UK Environment Bill, which is held up in Parliament at the moment, but we hope is going to be in the next session. So with a bit of a good wind behind it, we hope it's going to get into law. And there are lots of really good ideas in that bill, and that will significantly have an impact on our recycling rate. So if you look at the paragraph below the waste collection target, you will see that there's all sorts of goodies promised, like deposit return schemes. Well, if we don't have our bottle collection, our recycling rate is going to go substantially down. Then there's extended producer responsibility, which is a right thing to happen. And then obviously food waste collections. It is suggested that food waste collection should be compulsory. Now, that is going to have a significant impact on our budget, but it will also have an impact on recycling rates. In councils where their recycling rates are 70%, it's because they collect food waste. And I think the Welsh are the best at it. So I just wanted to flag that up for members, that this is watch this space, because there's a lot of thinking to do around this whole area of recycling. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Sue, for that insight into some of those comments that were made on page 12. Paul Osborne.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Byrne touched on it slightly. I just think it's worth mentioning that we have many performance indicators, and I think the fact that they're not just reported, they're not all reported to Cabinet, but they are there and they are looked after. And I know that in years past, we've asked a question on things, and Ben says if something's going wrong, you'll know about it. So, I think, one that springs to mind is housing benefit claims. It was always a continued thorn in our side, but over the years that got better, much improved. So therefore, it's not on the list as such because it's working. And I'm sure that if anything went wrong, Ben would come back and say something's going wrong. Can we look at this again? So just to highlight that there are many other performance indicators out there. They just don't all have to be reported because they're not I won't say not important, but they are important, but they don't need to be reported on and be kept an eye on all the time. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarity, Paul. Very useful to know. If I can invite Councillor Ryan Hall and then Councillor John Barnes before we take this to a vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, just to point out that on item 4, the indicator shows the proposed target of 484, which is very comfortable. That's the local plan, but the actual housing needs, which we have to follow via the government because our plan is more than 5 years old, is actually 736. So, I mean, both are silly numbers, but I'm not sure why we don't make any reference to that. I just put that down as a note. I don't think it makes a great deal of difference, really, because neither number is achievable at the moment.
Thank you for that comment, Jonathan. I'm sure that's noted somewhere, Ben. Right. Councillor John Barnes.
Yes, Chairman, we'll have a chance to talk about this at overview and scrutiny, so I'm not going to make many comments tonight, but two things I would underline. One is the importance of comparative data. I think we need to pick up on Councillor Burns' point. I think the difference between targets and indicators is important. Targets are where we have a degree of control. And it seems to me that, for example, if you look at 1, 2, and 3 of the housing targets, we have a degree of control over those and can set ourselves targets. Other things like the number of affordable homes delivered or the net additional homes built are really only indicators. And I rather wonder with Councillor Vine Hall why we don't use the real figure, because inventing an artificial target when we don't actually control most of the providers really is crucifying ourselves unnecessarily. And the last thing I would quickly want to mention, I realise we're looking at climate change, but can I just mention the magic word biodiversity and get Ben thinking about how we might look at that?
Thank you for your comments, John. Ben, would you just like to come back on that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank the councillors for all of their comments. Just picking up on two things. I'll be looking at the biodiversity and maybe talking with our environment strategy manager as to how we might pick that up into future years in terms of a metric. The other thing with regards to the housing, so we do provide two targets. One is the supply target, which is a number that is based upon developments on the ground that we anticipate coming forward within the timescale of the financial year, and the 484 is the local plan target. It literally lifted straight out of our local plan as to what we heard, and the point's taken about the government target of well up into the 700s based on the housing needs. So I'll refer back to the head of service for planning to discuss whether or not that's something that we might want to put in there as well, just as a comparative, so you've got all three.
Thanks very much indeed, Ben. Kevin, can I ask you to sum up and move this report?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'd like to move that the key performance indicators for 21-22 and their performance targets set out in Appendix A are agreed following a review by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. And in doing so, just remind Overview and Scrutiny that they can review this, and if they wish to add any more indicators that they may. But of course, more indicators means more staff time in preparing the information, so just please bear that in mind. But it is important, and Councillor Osborne is absolutely correct, that exceptions will also be reported to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So if we're doing particularly well or particularly badly on any item, that will be reported. So it's not necessary to put everything down in this basket. Can I invite Councillor Timpey to second that for me, please?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Dixon. Yeah, delighted to second. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Lisa, if we can take a vote on this, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Bayliss.
For.
Brewerton.
For.
Byrne.
For.
Dixon.
For.
Field.
For.
Oliver.
For.
Proshak.
For.
Timpey.
For.
Vinehall.
For.
That's carried, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you very much, Ben, for your work in preparing that report. If we can go forward to agenda item 8.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I declare my personal and prejudicial interest in 8, number 1, and we'll leave the meeting if Lisa could let me back in for 2, 3 and 4, please. Thank you.
Right, thank you. And is there any other declarations? Catherine?
Yes, please redeclare my prejudicial interest and that I can stay and talk, but I can't vote. Thank you.
Right, thank you. There are no other declarations. This is the report, Community Grant Scheme Round 2, report of Ben Hook, Head of Acquisitions, Transformation and Regeneration, to present and recommend approval of community grant applications for Round 2, Ben.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, before I start this, I'd like to thank the work of Nicola Mitchell, the officer who runs the community grant scheme, and the work of the panel, who diligently reviewed all of the recommendations and all of the applications to come up with this, the recommendations as laid out in Appendix A. I won't go on too much about it. What I will say is that the round 2 of this year, I mean round 1 of this year only saw £24,000 be awarded. Round 2 of this year had an initial application amount of almost £190,000, so a significant increase in the demand on round 2 over round 1. So I'd like to thank all those members who went out there and promoted this scheme throughout their communities to bring those applicants forward. Obviously significantly oversubscribed. We were not able to award all of the money that we would have liked to, so the panel made some very difficult decisions about where that money should go, and the request is laid out in table 4 in terms of the amounts that have been recommended, which leaves us with a little over £500, I think, to play with in carryover. So recommend Appendix A to the Cabinet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Ben. Are there any Cabinet members who wish to make any observations? No, but Mary Barnes would like to. So, Mary.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I would just like to express our terrific appreciation of the generosity to Hurst Green for their playground. I know how hard the village worked towards this project, and I think it involved every child in the school. But everyone is absolutely delighted. If you'll forgive me, Chairman, but I'd just like to flag up how important it is that we keep our playgrounds in really good order. It is so important for the safety of children, but more than that, it is becoming more and more of an encumbrance on parish councils to keep their playgrounds in really good order. It's a very, very expensive project, and something that I think all town councils and parish councils should be aware of. So I'm hoping that this gives some kind of heart to those who have playgrounds that really could do with a little bit of financial help. And this is absolutely brilliant as a starter, but there are others, and I hope that they will get, obviously they'd have to work for it as hard as Hurst Green have for this, but I hope that eventually we will have all our playgrounds in a similar sort of order. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you for those comments. If I can invite Councillor Sue Proshak and then Councillor Bayliss, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'm happy to move 1 separately from 2, 3 and 4 so we can allow Councillor Dixon back in. I just wanted to thank Councillor Mary Barnes for her comments. Their application, her screen application, was a star application. They actually went and consulted all the children in the primary school, and I have to say the her screen play equipment, from my knowledge when I was a councillor there, does need improving. And play equipment, I'd like to thank Councillor Osborne for sending that wonderful picture of the Canberra play equipment. It was absolutely stunning. I'm trying to have a look at it for real. So thank you for that, Councillor Osborne. And the other thing I need to thank is and Ben has already mentioned Nicola Mitchell, who's the Programme Projects Officer, who we really work hard on these grants. We go through them with a fine-tooth comb, helped by Mari Kennedy, who's the admin assistant. But we also on the panel, apart from finance and Tony, we also have David Pankhurst, who's chair of the rather I wouldn't say RVA, but the Local Council Association. We have Claire Cordell from Rather Voluntary Action. We have Kevin Bottrell, who's the Enterprise and Funding Lead for Action in Rural Sussex. And so I'd really like to thank, we have good discussions, we look at them all in detail, and we do make, as been suggested by Ben, some difficult decisions when we actually can't meet the full request. But the ones that you've got in front of you, the 12 you have in front of you, there are clear benefits to offer the communities. And so we've had a robust assessment and driven by community support. So I'd like to very, very warmly recommend these to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all the work that you put into with that panel and officer support in bringing this report together where we are. Councillor Christine Bayliss.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to second recommendation 1, and just to say, and I know Councillor Coleman can't be with us this evening, but I would like to say a big thank you on behalf of the Bexhill Family Collective for the grant, the small grant that they put in and achieved. It's both Councillor Brereton and myself, and I think Councillor Oliver, you were there as well, attended the opening of the Sibley Nursery this morning, and you will know what a fantastic project that is. That's going to be, or is as of today. And supported right across from all groups and all political parties, which I think is fabulous.
Thank you for that, Christine. So we can take a vote on recommendation 1 minus Councillor Kevin Dixon.
And Councillor Field. So I should just be calling all the other members. Yes, so you're taking them all on block, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Bayliss.
4.
Councillor Brereton.
4.
Councillor Byrne.
4.
Councillor Oliver.
4.
Councillor Proshak.
4.
Councillor Timpey.
4.
Councillor Vinehall.
4.
That's carried, Chairman.
Excellent. Thank you for that, and thanks for all the help on that. And I just think it's absolutely brilliant when you see these funds that facilitate and make things happen. And I think that's really touching the community, which is part of this. I know Kevin will make 1 or 2 comments when he comes back in, because we're now going to vote on items 2, 3, and 4.
Chairman, I'll just try and get, Councillor Dixon's joined us.
Okay, Kevin, would you just like to sum up and move items 2, 3, and 4?
Can you hear me?
Yep, I think he's in the corridor somewhere.
I can't see you, but never mind. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'd like to move items 2, 3, and 4. The small grants need to be increased to £1,000. That's quite important. We're not getting many requests for just the £500. So the idea is that we would move to £1,000 and hopefully encourage more small grants. Number 3 is that the Head of Service Acquisitions, Transformation, Regeneration be granted delegated authority to approve these small grants of up to £1,000. And please could we ask all members to promote this £1,000 small grant scheme within their wards. £1,000 will go a long way for a small project, and we would really like to be giving away a bit more of that money. And in closing, Chairman, I'd just like to reiterate what I said at full council last week. The community grant scheme is going nowhere. Later in this agenda, we will be looking at the corporate budget going forward, and the money is there in the corporate budget going forward until further notice. So community grants will not be going anywhere. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for your, Kevin. I think, Lisa, we can vote on these items.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Councillor Bayliss.
4.
Brereton.
4.
Byrne.
4.
Dixon.
4.
Field.
4.
Oliver.
4.
Proshak.
4.
Timpey.
4.
Vinehall.
4.
That's carried, Chairman.
Jolly good, and thank everyone for the work on that. So often the officer supports don't always get the acknowledgement for all the work that they put in here, but I know that Nicola worked very closely with the panel to get to the conclusion where we are. So I think we're on item 9 now. Yep. Reporter Ben Hook, Head of Acquisitions, Transformation and Regeneration. It's the report to seek approval for allocation of appropriate funds for the feasibility, detailed design and full planning application submission for the development of 35 Beeching Road once the existing lease has expired. If I can ask you to lead on this, please, Ben.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this property, which is sort of on Beeching Road, but also accessible via Wainwright Road, known previously as the Graham's Trade Counter, which is has been utilised by Skinner Sheds as a sort of a transfer yard for some years now. Was always in the freehold of the council, but was on a long leasehold to Sangabain, who are the owners of the Graham's brand. We in December we repurchased this building, repurchased the head lease, so we've got direct control now over that with the tenant, who is Skinner Sheds, in place up until 2023. And we have been informed by the tenant that they are unlikely to seek to renew their lease. This gives us a good lead-in period now of a few years in order to work up a proposal for that site. It is included within the DASA, the Development Site Allocations Local Plan, under policy BEX 414, and has been allocated for both retail and light commercial use as in that policy. We are seeking to we are undertaking a number of conversations with several retail operators to make sure we can try and bring it forward under the policy. If that proves unviable, or there's no appetite within the marketplace for that, we'll be consulting with planners to see what other options are available. I think the key thing is that the income, the future income from this site, is a key part of the medium-term financial plan, and therefore we do need to be in a position where we can develop that site in as quick a time as possible following the end of the current tenancy into whatever it is that we develop it into, be a retail or a commercial building. So in order to do that, we do require a budget in order to have architects in place and the necessary professions, and to bring forward a planning application on that site, along with the remainder of the Wainwright Road site. Members will remember that a couple of months ago you gave permission for us to enter into negotiations with the enter into a lease, with a developer to bring forward a GP surgery on that site. So whatever development we bring forward will also include the remainder of that 1 to 7 Wainwright Road site. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ben, for the report. I believe I will ask Councillor Christine Bayliss for comments on this, but I think it's an exciting sort of project with the area within Beeching Road and Wainwright Close, where we will see significant coming together of some quite exciting plans in the years to come. And thank you for the work on that. Christine, would you like to, as a lead for regeneration, I know you've been involved with some of the plans here or the ideas here, would you like just to make comments, please?
Yes, I've just got one or two short comments to make. This particular piece of land was purchased by Rother District Council in the sort of recent past. I think possibly Ben might confirm this or not. I think it was probably about 12 months to 18 months ago we purchased this particular piece of land. It is making a contribution at the moment to the council finances. The point I think that we're trying to make here is that we want when the current leaseholder vacates the premises, you need as short a time as possible, a short a void as possible, so that we continue to sort of make money, without waiting a long time for planning permissions, etc., etc. So this is a sort of stitch in time proposal. It will, as you say, it will add to our sort of portfolio along Beeching Road on the right hand side as you go from the police station along towards London Road. That land is I think now all in our sort of ownership, and we can really transform that, add to the regeneration of Bexhill and the district. So I would recommend to my cabinet colleagues to support the recommendation.
Thank you very much, Christine. Kevin, would you just like to second that and make any comments from the financial point of view?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, very happy to second this very exciting prospect, really, in Bexhill, and just underlines yet another investment within our district from this administration. And this is the way forward to make some money, but also to invest in the fabric of Bexhill. And I very much look forward to this one coming forward in the next year or two. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. It's a case of investing where we are able to create jobs and also enhance the local area, because these sites would only fall into disrepair if we didn't bring them forward. So thank you for that. Lisa, if we can vote on this, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Bayliss.
4.
Brewerton.
4.
Byrne.
4.
Dixon.
4.
Field.
4.
Oliver.
4.
Proshak.
4.
Timpey.
4.
Vinehall. Councillor Vinehall.
Apologies. 4. 4.
Thank you. That's carried, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you again, Ben. If we can move on to agenda item 10, the additional restrictions grant discretionary business grant scheme. Report of Robin Bennard, Assistant Director Resources, to agree an expansion of the current ARG scheme to provide funding to a wider range of businesses affected by the continuing COVID-19 pandemic. This is really with government guidance and us looking to use the local discretionary decisions that we can deal with. Thank you, Robin, and for the work you're doing so far, which I know has been significant. And thank you for bringing this report together.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Just as you say, this is seeking to approve the extension of the scheme that's already been in place for some time now. Just to remind members, we've received funding in 2 tranches, totaling some 2.7 million, but this is to cover us all the way through to March 2022, depending on how we progress on the new roadmap outlined by the government recently. In terms of what we've done so far, we've helped some 371 businesses. And totaling sort of £800,000 worth of grants have already been made out of this fund. And the existing grant criteria set out on paragraph 4 of your report, so you can see all the businesses that we have been supporting. And then from feedback that particularly Councillor Dixon sought from members and also from businesses, we're proposing that we extend that criteria as set out in paragraphs 5 to 8 of the report. And that's particularly with focus on those sort of non-high street charities which have not been able to access any support, plus also businesses that are materially affected by the pandemic and not required to close, but effectively their customer base has disappeared. So we set out some general criteria there for us to be able to manage that in a sensible way. and to focus on the small sort of businesses and micro businesses that operate within Rother. We've also made mention of the larger businesses, but we haven't got any indication yet of any larger businesses in trouble within the district. But clearly, if something comes forward, it does appear that we would have funding in order to help them potentially maintain their business and keep them going through any difficult period. But we would bring those back specifically to members if that actually happened. So happy to take any questions from the report, Chairman.
Thank you, Robin. Doesn't appear to be any questions coming forward, but again, an acknowledgement here to you and your staff. Chris Watchman, I know, has been very much involved in the mechanics of this and making it a success. I think is also the fact is that, you know, giving this discretion, that does mean that we can identify need. And I think that's the important thing of any grant, is the need where businesses do need this, and we're in a position to facilitate. So thank you for that. If I can invite what have we got here? Kevin to, are you seconding this or proposing it, Kevin? I'm not quite sure here. I've got a note that you're going to...
It's for me. I'm a Councillor Oliver, I'm afraid. Yes, thank you. And again, this is another great work from Robin and his team. I guess I'd personally like to thank Chris Watchman as well. It's very important that these people are thanked who get the money out of the door into the businesses, so that we can carry on through this dreadful pandemic. I'd like to thank all members who responded to my inquiries about anyone that they'd heard of that were struggling and suffering and hadn't had support from elsewhere. And thanks to that feedback, we've tailored best we can this report so that we can help as many people. But I'd still urge all members, firstly, to promote this scheme to businesses that they know of, and to secondly, to let Robin know of anyone who maybe is not covered by this scheme. We're seeking extra delegation so that we can help businesses through this last bit of the pandemic until we can get through and hopefully back to normality in a few months' time. But again, thank you all. And I'd like to propose the two recommendations: that the additional eligible business sectors outlined in the report be included in the Council's additional restrictions grant scheme, and that the Chief Executive be granted delegated authority in consultation with the Cabinet portfolio holders for finance and performance management and economic development and regeneration to determine the amount of grants and detailed criteria. And can I ask Councillor Vinehall to second that for me?
Brewerton.
4.
Byrne.
4.
Dixon.
4.
Field.
4.
Oliver.
4.
Proshak.
4.
Timpey.
4.
And Vinehall.
4.
That's carried, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Kevin, for making the additional initiative of getting members involved and getting feedback on this. I know we've also worked with the various chambers of commerce, so they're aware with their members, and also our local MP's office, where they are getting inquiries and they were able to redirect them on to Robin and Chris Watchman. So, you know, it's a case of actually looking to give people a wraparound support when they have the difficulties of this awful crisis that we found ourselves in. Rightio, so if we can move on to agenda item 11. Okay, the revenue budget and capital programme monitoring Q3 2020/21. Tony Baden, Finance Manager. Thank you for coming this evening, Tony, and for the work on this. And the report is yours to lead forward, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. So yeah, this is a Q3 monitoring report, so as at the end of 31st of December 2021. So the headlines: forecast use of reserves is now £2.594 million, which is 1.677 million over budget. And it does represent further improvement, albeit very small. It represents an improvement of 193,000 since the Q2 forecast, and since we did the Q1 forecast, it's an overall improvement of 290,000. So far, it's been going in the right direction, and the forecasts have been reasonably accurate. Excuse me. So 912,000 of the overspend is due to the COVID response, and again, that's about 197k lower than what we reported in Q2. And the changes, as in the previous reports, are shown in the table in paragraph 6. 765k overspend is related to non-COVID spend, and that is a very, very tiny change of about 3,000 from the previous quarter, albeit made up of several larger variances. And these are detailed in paragraphs 8 to 22 of the report. There is one thing that's slightly unusual about this report, Chair, that you wouldn't have seen on previous reports, and that one of the recommendations is that members will recall that we've applied for a grant funding from Sport England to help fund our leisure services and the service operated by Freedom Leisure. We're still waiting on Sport England to know what the outcome of that application is. But if that's successful, then members are asked that we are asked to approve acceptance of that grant. And I've given a little bit more information in paragraphs 29 to 32, which gives you a bit further detail. So it's slightly outside of what we normally discuss in the monitoring report, but hopefully it makes sense to everybody. So the first table shows the usual budget versus actual and variances in the usual format. And the second table, as I introduced in the last monitoring report, shows the quarter-on-quarter variances. So all variances are explained in paragraphs 6 to 22, and I'll highlight the main changes from quarter 2. They are in an executive directors, that's increased by £121,000. That's additional cost due to staff restructuring and the work associated with the transformation of the council, and that again is explained in the body of the report. Environmental services, the forecast spend we think will decrease there by about £127,000 because several of the staff in that department have been deployed on the public health response to the pandemic, and these costs are funded from MHCLG and East Sussex County Council grants. So we'll be able to recover those staff costs. Planning underspend of £69,000 is also briefly mentioned in the report. That's against the local development framework budget. In acquisition, transformation and regeneration, we had an initial bad debt provision of £200,000. We've reduced that down by about £75,000 now. Again, we haven't actually written off any debts yet, so we just feel that it's we are able at this stage to reduce the level of provision. Housing and community services, the forecast deficit, that's increased by about £90,000, and the main reasons are set out in that table in paragraph 6. I'd just like to draw members' attention to one thing that they may find of interest in paragraph 15, and that's to note that the number of garden waste subscriptions have now exceeded 20,000, and this was triggered a clause in our waste collection contract that increases our income from this source. So that's a bit of good news for the council there as well. Resources, we've completed the half-yearly housing benefits subsidy claim reconciliation now. And it shows that we've managed to sustain the improved level of performance in terms of claims administration process. However, as I explained in the previous report, this significantly reduces the income that we recover from the number of housing benefit overpayments by a further 250,000. So it does act against us in that respect. Should just like to point out to members that as part of next year's budget, we have retuned, if you like, the housing benefit overpayments income budget to reflect current year levels. So hopefully we won't see that sort of significant variance again next financial year. Income from property investment funds, that continues to recover. We've upped the forecast by about another 38,000 since quarter 2, and whilst I haven't specifically mentioned it in the report, the capital values of those investments are starting to come back or starting to recover as well. So that's further good news. The pandemic, not surprisingly, has slowed down the pace of the capital programme. And this has meant that we've not borrowed money this year that we were initially anticipating borrowing. So the forecast cost of our borrowing is reduced by about £68,000. And for the same reason, because there's been a slowdown in the schemes, the amount of capital funded from revenue expenditure is also expected to reduce by about 628k. So this has an impact on our level of reserves, although members should note this is only a short-term impact because those capital schemes that we're not funding from revenue this year, they will still be rolled forward into the programme next year. Total funding from the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government for the response to the pandemic has now reached £2.567 million. Paragraph 23 again sets out, so I've spoke a little bit out of turn. The paragraph 23 sets out the impact of the forecast on our reserves levels. And again, hopefully members will find that of use as well. If I can just say a little bit about the collection fund performance, council tax collection as at the end of the quarter 3 was about 2.5% lower than this time last year. So that's slightly lower than the Q2 comparative that I reported to members back in December. And business rates is about 1.85% lower than this time last year. That actually represents quite an improvement from the Q2 comparative. It's not in the report because of the obvious timing issues, but members will know though from the latest February bulletin that those rates are slightly out of date now. So you need to sort of bear that in mind when you're reading that sort of that headline message, if you like. So the capital programme, if we can just finish off by saying a few words on the capital programme, Chair, because at the 14th of December Cabinet meeting, when I presented the capital outturn forecast, I did explain that spending was very low due to the pandemic. I think we'd only spent about £2 million year to date at that point in time. And I did say that we would undertake a review and report back as part of the Q3 report, a more realistic picture of what we thought the outturn would be. And that's what we've done. You can see the results of that in Appendix A. And members will note that the predicted spend is reduced by some £28 million to about £13.5 million. And the largest schemes affected by the revision, if you like, are the North East Bexhill Office Development Scheme and the Blackfriars Housing Development Scheme. And again, that doesn't mean that we're not doing those schemes. It just means that the timing of spend has been pushed back into future years. So both these and several other smaller schemes have been reprofiled into future years, and you can pick that up in Appendix B as well. So I hope members found that interesting and helpful, and I'm happy to try and take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Tony. I'm not sure there are any questions that have come forward at this moment in time. I'm just pleased to see that we're working with our business partners, Freedom Leisure, with regard to ongoing provision of leisure facilities, of which we know is a priority, something in the long term we can assess more accurately post-COVID once we're discussing it with them and the information that we're getting forward nationally. Kevin, this is your report. I think if you would like to move this, and I believe someone's going to second it. I think it's Jonathan, I think.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'd like to resolve that the report be noted, and just a few words on the Freedom Leisure grant, which we shall find out on March the 8th, whether we've been successful. But members should note that though that only is giving us money for leisure services from December of last year, not from the start of the pandemic. So I believe that we'll be able to get some relief from the money we've paid from December, and hopefully any carryover will be used in next year's budget. But obviously we'll wait and hear if we've been successful on March the 8th. So apart from noting the report, the other extra recommendation is that we accept any grant from Sport England, and that we enter into a grant agreement with Freedom Leisure to ensure compliance with that Sport England grant should we be successful. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that. And Lisa, report is for noting, but we're voting on the success of the grant, yeah?
Yes, Chairman. Yeah, I'll still take a vote.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Bayliss.
4.
Brewerton.
4.
Byrne.
4.
Dixon.
4.
Field.
4.
Oliver.
4.
Proshak.
4.
Kimpy.
4.
Vinehall.
4.
That's carried, Chairman.
Excellent. I think we are we're there, aren't we? I think we're there. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much for Democratic Services, Lisa and the team, Claire and the team for supporting us this evening. And thank you for those people that have perhaps decided that on a Monday evening that they would view us via YouTube. So we'll close the meeting at 19:50, if that's okay. Claire, thank you.